Imagine standing by the side of a road, a gentle breeze on your skin, watching people scurry along in every direction. What if you could carry that same sense of peace into your everyday life, letting others be as they are, without letting their actions upset you? That's exactly the promise of Mel Robbins' new book, The Let Them Theory. Right from the start, Robbins poses a bold idea. What if the secret to happiness, success, and love really were as simple as 2 words? In fact, she doesn't hide it. On the cover and in the intro, she explicitly says, 2 simple words, let them, will set you free from the opinions, drama, and judgments of others. Once you start repeating, let them, Robbins claims, you begin stripping away the exhausting need to control every little thing. It's like a mental trick that gives yourself permission to move on. Ultimately, she says, doing this puts you back in the driver's seat of your own life. Now, to keep this momentum going, please remember to like, share, and comment on this video. Your engagement helps us continue delivering life-changing book summaries and insights. It also connects you with a community of curious, growth-minded people. Every like, share, and comment is a small step toward a more positive you, so thank you for your support. Robbins herself is no stranger to big ideas. She wrote The 5-Second Rule and other self-help bestsellers before, so she knows how to craft a catchy principle. In 2023, she mentioned the Let Them Theory on her podcast and social media, and the idea quickly went viral. By late 2024, the Let Them Theory was a New York Times bestseller in weeks. Even Oprah Winfrey weighed in, calling it a game changer, a life changer. The craze was undeniable. A Washington Post article notes that fans formed a Facebook group with nearly 17,000 people who got Let Them tattoos as daily reminders. One woman said seeing those words inked on her arm really released me mentally from the pressure to control others. Clearly, Robbins had struck a chord. So what is the Let Them theory in practice? In plain terms, it's this. Stop trying to control other people and focus on controlling what you can, namely yourself. Think of it as deciding to manage your own garden instead of everybody else's. You accept that you have 0 power over others' thoughts, words, or actions. Whenever someone does something that used to provoke you, say a coworker cuts you off in traffic, a stranger yells at you in line, or a friend criticizes your work, your response becomes, let them. You simply note it, shrug it off, and move on. You don't tailgate, you don't argue, you don't let your mood spiral. In effect, you stop wasting energy on what you can't control and redirect that energy toward what you can influence. In fact, the book's promotional materials lay out exactly what Robbins promises this mindset will teach you. You'll learn to stop comparing yourself to other people, to break free from fear and self-doubt, and to release the grip of people's expectations. She even promises that this shift will help you pursue what truly matters to you with confidence, build resilience against everyday stressors, and ultimately define your own path to success, joy, and fulfillment. These aren't vague slogans. They're outcomes she says you can achieve by consistently saying, let them to the nonsense that once owned your attention. The idea is that each time you practice letting go, you chip away at common problems, envy, anxiety, self-doubt, and overdependence on others' approval. If that idea already sounds freeing, here's a little experiment. Type, I accept, in the comments now. Consider it a small pledge to yourself that you'll try letting go of other people's drama. And if you haven't done so yet, don't forget to like this video too. Your support means we can keep making these summaries for you. Now, Robbins is quick to emphasize that let them is only half the message. The other half is let me. In practice, that means once you stop trying to control others, you shift your focus fully onto yourself. You accept that others make their own choices, but you still own your own. As The Guardian explains, let them only works if it's followed by let me. In other words, after you mentally say let them, you consciously decide what you will do next. For example, if a friend blurts out something hurtful, you might think, let them say that. But then you decide, I will be kind and keep my own peace. If an email from work is rude, you might note, let them be annoyed, and then you plan, I will reply professionally tomorrow. In short, once you stop trying to police others, you actively choose how you respond and spend your time. Of course, Robbins is clear about boundaries. Let them is not an excuse to be passive when important issues arise. If someone is doing something truly harmful or unjust, she says you should absolutely step in or get help. Letting go really means choosing not to fight unwinnable battles over everyday annoyances, not that you ignore real problems. And importantly, you still stand up for yourself. For example, if a coworker repeatedly interrupts you in meetings, you don't just meekly accept it forever. You calmly address it, perhaps by speaking up or speaking to a manager. Then you think, let them react to my boundary. In other words, you speak up for yourself, but then let go of the worry about how they'll respond. Let's walk through a few examples the book covers. At work, stress often runs off the rails. Robbins literally lists manage stress as a skill you'll gain. Picture a typical day. Urgent emails flood in at 11 p.m., deadlines loom, and your boss suddenly demands another task. Normally, you'd panic or send a furious reply. The let them approach says, pause. Mentally tell yourself, let them have that urgent demand. I will address it with a clear mind tomorrow. Then, for example, you close your laptop and get a good night's sleep. Maybe you even do a quick breathing exercise. Inhale, exhale, and silently repeat, let it go. By not letting your boss's late-night emails steal your rest, you actually handle the situation better in the morning. Over time, these pauses build resilience against everyday stressors, because you keep your cool instead of snapping. In daily life, the principle is much the same. Suppose someone in your family snaps at you over dinner for a trivial reason. You feel a surge of anger. Instead of lashing back, you take a breath and remind yourself, they're upset about something else, let them. You might even practice physically stepping back, not leaving the room, but turning your head for a moment or taking a sip of water. This small break breaks the emotional mirror effect. You continue calmly, perhaps saying, we can talk about this later, and most likely it diffuses the tension. Robbins even has a chapter titled, When Grown-Ups Throw Tantrums. The lesson is, don't let someone else's outburst ruin your evening. By choosing let them in that moment, you save hours or days of resentment. Another major theme is comparison and envy. We've all scrolled social media feeling that knot in our stomach. A friend's perfect vacation, a colleague's bragging post, and suddenly our life looks disappointing. Robbins urges us to invert that habit. One chapter is titled, Make Comparison Your Teacher. Here's how it works. When you see someone else's success, pause and ask, okay, what can I learn from that? If a coworker got that big promotion, instead of sulking, maybe ask them for tips or note what skills you can develop. If a friend bought a new house and you've always wanted to, instead of scrolling angrily, think, "Great for them. Let me use this as motivation to save or explore my housing options." By treating others' wins as information rather than competition, you shift into a growth mindset. You still recognize their achievements, but you let them have their moment, and then you focus on your own path. Robbins also tackles the perennial challenge of changing others. How many times have you tried to make someone see things your way? She's blunt about it. You can't change people who don't want to change. If you find yourself nagging a spouse, a parent, or even a friend to act differently, she says to stop and say, "Let them instead." For example, if your teen refuses to help with chores, you might think, "Let them choose to do that or not." Meanwhile, you focus on your own household chores or a self-improvement task. This frees you from frustration. In fact, by respecting others' free will, you often become a more positive influence just by example. The book emphasizes, people only change when they're ready, so stop expending energy on what they do. Instead, let them lead their journey. This idea of not rescuing spills into her advice on helping versus enabling. If someone you care about is in trouble, for instance, a friend who keeps making poor financial decisions, it's natural to want to jump in and fix it. But Robbins warns that doing too much for others can actually enable bad habits. She memorably writes, "The more you rescue, the more they sink." If you're always bailing your adult son out of debt, he never learns budgeting. So she says, be supportive and kind, but let them face some consequences. For example, give them advice and maybe even lend money once, but then let them manage on their own. You might think, I can't watch them struggle, but she advises us to step back and let them live with the results. In doing so, you keep yourself from burning out, and you often help them become stronger. And it even applies intimately to love and romance. Robbins asks bluntly, are you truly getting the love you deserve? If you constantly find yourself trying to fix your partner or get them to act differently, she suggests, let them. One chapter is quite literally titled, Choose the Love You Deserve. The idea is that instead of people-pleasing endlessly, you let your partner reveal their true self. If someone repeatedly breaks promises or disrespects you, continuing to say, let them, means you're finally giving yourself permission to step out of that pattern. For example, if a partner flirts with others and your old reaction was guilt or begging, you instead think, this is their choice, let them. That clarity often shows you who really cares about you. The book even promises to help you create the love you deserve. By letting people act like themselves, you free yourself to find someone who truly values you. There's even a dedicated section on adult friendships, a topic many books skim over. Robbins acknowledges a hard truth. Friendships can change, and sometimes that hurts. She explains why some friendships naturally fade. Jobs, families, and interests pull people in different directions. Her advice is to accept that gracefully. If an old friend moves away or stops texting, rather than chasing or sulking, you tell yourself, let them live their life, let me live mine. She doesn't say you cut them off in anger. You simply acknowledge the reality. In her words, one door closing on a friendship can also mean another door opening. Letting go of one relationship creates space to build new ones that fit your current life. You might keep caring for an old friend in your heart, but you accept that they're not as present in your day-to-day. As Robbins puts it, best friends of your life can come at any time once you stop clinging to connections that have naturally run their course. By now, you've heard a lot of what the let them theory covers. If you're finding these ideas resonate, do me a favor, hit the like button and share this video with someone who could use this perspective. And I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me which insight impacted you the most so far. Your support really helps us keep producing these summaries, and it builds a community of learners dedicated to self-improvement. So why does it matter? Robbins' entire book is about practical transformation. She doesn't just hand you platitudes, she embeds the advice in relatable stories and exercises. For instance, she shares personal experiences from her own life. She even involves her teenage daughter, Sawyer, as a character in the narrative. Sawyer challenged her to loosen her grip as a parent, which led Robbins to powerful realizations about control. Robbins talks about standing on stage, getting emotional, telling a book club how hard it was to step back and let her kids solve things. These anecdotes make the lessons concrete. You see the struggle and the success when let them is applied in real families. And it's not just stories. Robbins includes practical exercises and reminders to make the mindset stick. In the latter chapters, she suggests daily actions to reinforce the concept. For example, she might recommend keeping a small journal where each night you jot down moments you said, let them during the day and how it affected you. She also suggests creating visual cues, maybe a note on your mirror or a bracelet that remind you of the mantra. She even throws in tiny habit changes, compliment a stranger every day, or spend 10 minutes reorganizing a cluttered drawer. Simple acts that shift your focus back to yourself and positivity. One reviewer noted that the book's final sections feel like a grab bag of life tips, each aimed at rewiring your daily routine around this new mindset. Robbins also links her idea to research and expert advice. The official book description says she introduces world-renowned experts in psychology, neuroscience, and ancient wisdoms. In keeping with this, she cites studies showing that focusing on what you can control dramatically lowers stress and improves well-being. She quotes therapists who emphasize how acceptance and healthy boundaries are crucial for mental health. In fact, psychologist Dr. Chiki Davis says when we stop feeling the need to correct or save others, we naturally accept them as they are. Exactly the effect of let them. Likewise, therapists note that setting this mental boundary, letting others behave as they will, shifts your focus to your own peace. Let's be honest, some people might think, this all sounds like common sense. Robbins herself points out that the core ideas come straight from ancient sources, Stoicism, Buddhist teachings, even the familiar Serenity Prayer. In a way, the let them theory is modern Stoicism with a catchy title. But she embraces that. She even calls it a cheap trick, and it works. Her point is, even simple advice needs a memorable form. We often know what to do, but life makes it hard. Robbins' gift is packaging it in a way you'll actually do it during your day. If it helps people feel less miserable, it's worth repeating, right? And it's not just theoretical. Some reporters and readers have tried it for themselves. For example, one Guardian writer who tested the idea described getting into a heated argument at home, and instead of lashing out, silently repeating, let them under her breath. She said she literally felt her jaw unclench and her anger fade. It didn't magically fix the argument, but it stopped her from saying something she'd regret. That real-world trial shows the concept in action. A quick pause, powered by 2 little words, that can derail a potential conflict. So what's the take-home message? The let them theory basically says that your peace begins with those two words. When you consistently tell yourself, let them, about things outside your control, you'll gradually free yourself from a lot of needless frustration. Then, by adding, let me, meaning let me focus on my own choices and actions, you reclaim that time and energy for your own life and goals. As the Washington Post puts it, release what you can't control, namely the opinions, emotions, and reactions of others, and reclaim your time and energy. That sentence alone summarizes it. Once those outside worries are released, you spend your energy on yourself instead of on battling the world. If you're ready to try it out, here's one more small step. Take a deep breath and think of one person or situation that's been bothering you lately. In your mind, or quietly out loud, say, let it go. That's your cue to stop fighting against it. Then, if you really want to commit, type, I choose growth, in the comments below. Think of that as your personal pact, that from now on you'll put your own growth first, rather than carrying other people's burdens. Sometimes even a small ritual like that can help anchor a big change in your mindset. Thank you for joining this deep dive into the Let Them theory. If you found these insights valuable, please hit the like button, share this video with someone you care about, and leave your thoughts below. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you these high-quality book summaries. I'd love to hear what lessons you plan to take away from this book. See you in the next summary. And until then, keep practicing those two words. You might be surprised by how much freedom they bring.